I'm refuting the claim of an advocate which states that the consumption of milk has a positive impact on the health of humans. And the secondary claims were that 1, milk's nutritional aspects make it beneficial for human consumption. 2, there is no evidence that hormone use in cows is harmful. And 3, that regular consumption of milk has even been shown to prevent diseases and disorders later in life. Now first I'd like to address his second point where he stated that there's no evidence to suggest that hormone use in cows is harmful. Now I don't know if he's talking about the cow or the product that the cow produces, but it's in fact harmful to both. And he specifically mentions RBGH, which is a bovine growth hormone. And I found on the official website for the Center of Food and Safety in Washington, D.C. states that cows treated with RBGH develop significant health problems, including a 50% increase in the risk of leg or hoof problems, over a 25% increase in the frequency of udder infections, and serious reproductive problems. And because it results in udder infections, dairy farmers tend to use more antibiotics to combat these infections, in which the residues end up in the final product of milk and dairy products, and this could potentially cause allergic reactions to anybody who's sensitive to those specific antibiotics. And RBGH isn't the only growth hormone used in milk production to be found harmful to the consumer. And for the Center of Food and Safety also reveals that Canadian and European regulators have found that the FDA completely failed to consider a study that showed how the increased IGF-1 in hormonal milk could survive digestion and make its way into the intestines and bloodstream of consumers. Now, IGF-1 stands for the insulin-like growth factor, and according to an article in the LA Times by the Cancer Prevention Coalition in 1994, IGF-1 induces rapid division and multiplication of human breast epithelial cells and tissue. In my opponent's argument, he assured you all that the pasteurization process would destroy any hormones that made their way into the milk. Now, according to the European Food Safety Commission's report on public health aspects of the use of RBGH in March 1999, IGF-1 in milk is resistant to pasteurization, and even elevated levels of IGF-1 have been reported after pasteurization. And the unnatural rapid production promotes the transformation of normal breast epithelium to breast cancer. And the second claim that I would like to interpret was when he said that milk has a positive effect in preventing heart disease and certain cancers. I do not know the exact source of where he got this from, but I found research that says otherwise. According to Dr. Amy Linnell, the nutrition director at the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, or the PCRM, she states that besides prostate cancer, milk has been linked to asthma, anemia, allergies, juvenile onset diabetes, obesity, heart disease, and ovarian and breast cancer. So that statement made by her pretty much directly contradicts the claim that the advocate made. And I would now like to hit on the last point where it says that the nutritional aspects of milk make it beneficial for human consumption. He argued that milk consumption in adolescents and young adults prevent osteoporosis in future life. Now this is true, but however, milk during this age leads to some growth abnormalities in young children. In Dr. Benjamin Spock's book entitled Baby and Child Care, he states milk is very low in essential fats that are needed for brain development and high in the saturated fats that encourage artery blockage and weight problems as children grow. My opponent also backed up a secondary claim with evidence that shows that milk is rich in vitamins and that the calcium in milk makes it essential for human health regarding bones and teeth. These statements are true, but like I said earlier, any milk that's consumed that's coming from a cow that was treated with RBGH, with a hormone, has the risk of hormonal altering in the human system, and IGF-1, which I just discussed. And for my closing statement, I'd like to conclude that milk does have its benefits and its flaws, And then, although my opponent's claims were factual and valid, I found some evidence contradicting his information on billing and disease.
Right, the claims are pretty clearly indicated, good transitions between the points, so it's very easy to follow. There's not a lot of discussion of the advocate's evidence and how the advocate reasoned in this particular point. Almost all of your arguments are counterclaimed arguments, and you've got some good evidence on some of those points. For instance, there's information about RBGH and about IGF-1, and I thought that you developed those pretty well, although some of the data might seem a little old. For instance, the one claim that the FDA ignored this and that it's potentially dangerous is 1994. So at 15 years ago, you would think we'd have some data that showed that there was a consequence that's measurable in some way, and so I think the absence of any more recent evidence on that point maybe doesn't help that argument much. On the pasteurization claim, though, you did have a very direct response showing how pasteurization might not have any impact because it tends to resist it, and in some studies it actually increased the presence of that. Again, I think the inference is that there's some harmful consequence of the IGF-1 without it being demonstrated very well. Again, the transition to the second point was very clear, easy to follow. You're depending on a counterclaim on this particular point, instead of analyzing the advocate's evidence, you had one general piece of evidence that links milk to a variety of ailments. That's a very weak type of evidence, a link between those things. It's definitely not a causal claim that there is some connection there. There's nothing measurable, and depending upon what the advocate's evidence would be, that's how we would have to evaluate that information. The argument on the third point was very similar. You kind of accept the osteoporosis argument, but argue that there are other issues that we ought to be worrying about. So there's not a lot of analysis of the grounds or the warrant presented by the advocate, but we do get quite a few counterclaims, and they are being applied in appropriate places, so that part's good. All right.